I'd love to hear that. Okay, so the next song that I want to talk about is with another artist whom you work with a ton, Nessa Barrett, and my favorite song that you guys have done, Die First. Such amazing songwriting, and I think the highlight of that, besides the songwriting, is the instrumentation there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask a lot of like, what's real, what's not, because it's very hard for me to tell.
Yeah.
The first one I want to know is the drums.
I've got a good answer for you for this one.
Yeah, what is it?
It's all real.
It's all real.
Yeah, all of it.
But what's who played? Where'd you guys go to record it?
I'm pretty sure his name is Mono. In the show notes or whatever, I'll send you after.
Yeah.
But he did a great job. And it was just a situation where I had programmed drums in there, and I kind of knew what I wanted them to sound like.
Are you still using Superior Drummer? Like when we were working together, I was using that a lot.
Yes, and I think I picked that up from you.
Yeah.
I don't use it as much anymore. I've switched to Addictive more.
Yeah.
It might just be because the interface is better.
It's Addictive Drummer, to me, it sounds good right away.
Yeah.
And then Superior Drummer, it sounds better, but it takes a lot more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in today's world, we have to work quickly, or in your case for this song where it's like, oh, I'm going to put real drums down anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just go with Addictive Drummer.
Yeah, I had no intention of re-recording them.
Oh, wow.
Because usually I don't. Like
Okay,
I think I can, at this point, very very confidently make a set of drums that you wouldn't really know either way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
But those drums have so much feel. That's why I was like really curious.
And that's what I basically said to him. I said, I want the drums to sound the same,
right?
But I want them to be played by a person because, ghost notes, fills, all that stuff. It just like, and even the subtle perception of, and this might just be a producer thing, for me, it's the snare. When I hear the exact same snare hit 100 times in a row, that's the giveaway.
Yep.
There's no variation in it.
Yep.
That's the giveaway. And that's something that I don't think VSTs have truly nailed yet. Like, you'd probably need 100 alternate snare hits in one.
What I've picked up from our mutual buddy Dave is automating, just like changing a couple cents around.
Slight pitch, yeah.
That's a big thing.
I do that sometimes when I'm like really,
when you
I'm really feeling digging in. Like, but if I'm being honest,
it's a lot of work
at the pace. Yeah, it's like, am I doing that every time? No. So yeah, the drums are real in that. Obviously all the guitars are real.
Are you engineering that? Or you guys went to a studio, you had them engineer, then you mixed it after?
No, I did all of it at my studio.
Oh, nice.
It's just a lot of electric guitar layering, which I like learned from my indie rock days of like idolizing like Phoenix and stuff, where they had these, what I learned from those bands is like to get those really interesting guitar based choruses, you need to have a lot of different guitar layers. And the Strokes are masters of this. Like a lot of different guitar layers with different voicing. So it doesn't really just sound like a person playing guitar. It's like this amalgamation of different things. Because I don't have any interest in listening to a song where it's like power chords. It's just kind of like, it's boring. It's boring, and it feels kind of like testosterone-y or something.
Even
in a way.
Songs that a lot of people think are just power chords, most of the time it's not. Where it's the power chord is the main one, but then it's layered in with all these other things where you more notice it if I muted it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, I'm playing a triad, but it's pretty tucked in there.
Yeah.
But it's there, little things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And for Die First and with all of my music, like the key to it is drone notes.
Yeah.
Like, I'll play power chords, and then I'll have a guitar on the left playing the root note a little bit higher on the neck, and that just creates the emotional tension.
Yep.
And then I'll have like another drone type riff where it might be bouncing between two notes, and with Die First, that's what creates. It's a guitar based song, but it is in no way aggressive.
No,
it's like a soft, which is something that took me a long time to learn how to do. At least from the background that I came from, I can make something sound slamming,
right?
And that's easy. Like, it's low hanging fruit a little bit. What's much more difficult is to make something that sounds balanced and emotionally interesting, that is not abrasive but is full. Yeah. And that's, I think,
it's really hard to do.
Really hard. Yep. And that was what was a big challenge with Die First. And a lot of the Nessa stuff after that was like, we are not making aggressive rock music, but it does have guitars and live drums.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like, feels like a lot of like the 90s alternative music.
Yeah, Mazzy Star and, even like Cigarettes After Sex was a little more modern, but they really accomplished that well. And so, I added some acoustic guitar. And
so and that's what I wanted to get to, the guitars and the acoustic guitar. What's your normal... we'll start with electric guitar. What's your recording process? What gear are you running through?
And I have a whole host of different guitars, but I'm usually alternating between a Telecaster and a Les Paul, because I just think they're very different from each other.
Thing.
Yeah, and the Les Paul is like such an incredible recording guitar. All of it goes through the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, the like Kemper alternative.
Yep, they're great.
And that's the only thing I use.
Yeah. They sound great. I have a Kemper, which I don't regret buying it, but I've used the Neural DSP stuff a couple times, and every single time I'm like, sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah.
They sound great.
It's a great little box, and for me, I have from presets made the sounds that I like on there. I don't need 50 guitar sounds. I don't even need 10.
Right.
I need 5.
Exactly.
I need a clean tone that I like. I need a somewhat distorted tone I like. I need one that has reverb and chorus, and then that's it. And I don't ever want to think about it again. Because if you think about, sorry to cut you off, if you think about bands, like they had one guitar player usually playing with the same gear.
Yep.
And that, until they got to like superstar status, but most of the bands you fell in love with, at the point you fell in love with them, they were all coming out of the same amp. Yep. With the same pedals, and you were never like, geez, I hope that, I wish he changed it more.
Yeah, no. It was, it's again, that minimalism thing that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Sometimes the lack of choices is better, and it makes you just have to think outside the box and come up with better parts as opposed to relying on a cool sound.
Yeah, I think it's like, I would go as far to say that it is the superior way to get consistently better results.
Yeah. Have you found, because sometimes this happens layering guitars, and some people think it's a big problem, some people don't, but do you find that if you start layering guitars too much that you start building up some phase issues, or what?
No. And it could be the kind of guitar playing that I'm doing. Like I'm not stacking power chords in a way that like if you're making a Weezer record you would, although those probably aren't even layered that much, but it's not like 8 instances of a similar part. I'll have power chords on the left, power chords on the right, drones on the left, drones on the right, and like there's almost no opportunity for phase.
So you're quote unquote fixing that by, I'm not playing the same part 70 times. I'm just going to start switching up the parts and that complement each other.
Correct.
Yeah. That's how I do it too. And
it's an arrangement choice as opposed to, a technical.
Yeah. Growing up, I would be like, yeah, guys, we got to play the power chords like 3 or 4 times on each side.
Yeah.
Slightly change the tone. And then you're like, oh yeah, like it starts to sound a little bit phasey and
yeah. And I don't think like as the myth of stacking, making things become bigger, it's actually kind of opposite.
Yep.
As we've learned over the years.
That's what happens. It's every producer's journey.
Yeah. And like, I think the further you go in production, the more you realize how small the space is that you have to create in.
Yep.
Like, the 3, whatever, some people call it the 3 dimensions of, frequency, volume, and space, or whatever they are. And like, I feel like every year that goes by, the more I realize that it's such a small space.
Yep. Yeah. And you have to be really deliberate.
Yeah.
How I like to work lately is I'll just create. I'm in a creative mode. I'm going to come up with like 1 million parts.
Yeah.
And then I start playing that mute game.
Yeah.
And really being like, okay, this is cool, but is it necessary?
Yeah.
That's the most fun and most irritating game to play.
Yeah. The best creative moves I've ever made were mutes.
Yeah. It's so true. It's like, am I just like, does that tickle me only?
Yeah. No.
Like, it's sometimes it just really doesn't need that. And the last question I wanted to ask with Die First is, I think a standout in that song is the acoustic guitars and how well they're sitting in there. What are you using to record acoustic guitars most of the time? How far are you off the mic? Hardware?
I wish I could say I'm super scientific about it. It's a Gibson J45.
I mean, that's a lot of the sauce right there.
Yeah. That guitar obviously sounds amazing. At that time, I was probably using a Manley reference. Yeah. Realistically, I'm not going and switching out mics when I'm about to record a guitar. Because
I don't know any producer today that's really doing that unless you're in a studio.
And at the end of the day, in a mix, I would challenge almost any producer, and let alone any normal person.
Right.
If I pulled out a 251 or an SM7 and did the same. Come on.
Yeah. I'm only taking a ton of time recording an acoustic guitar when the song is an acoustic guitar and a vocal.
Yeah, me too.
That's when I'll really sit and fuck around. But when it's like another layer, it's like, all right, we can kind of move along here.
I think the key for me for recording acoustic guitars, at least for the sound that I'm after and songs like that, is playing so softly.
Yeah.
Like the softer I play it, the better it sounds.
Yeah. And are you compressing a lot after that?
No, I don't like the sound of compressed acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
To me, the acoustic guitar is it's one of those instruments where some sources can take compression really well, like vocals, kick drums, whatever. You compress them and it doesn't bother me.
Right.
I start to like them in a new way. But with acoustic guitars, I never like it. It's just, it ruins it to me. So
I find that when I'm playing, I try and compress myself, or, I'm more focused about not going like dun 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 dun, really playing a lot more evenly, so I don't have to rely on the compressor.
Yes, I think acoustic guitar is one of the instruments where like if you're going to set up and record an acoustic guitar as on a record, you have to be pretty good.
Yes.
It's very obvious with an acoustic guitar if the person is a good player or not. With an electric guitar with distortion and everything, like you can get
away with a lot.
Yeah, and in some ways it might sound better, but with acoustic, like that's when I really, especially when I first started producing like a lot and trying to make records that sounded like expensive and quote unquote analog and all this stuff, like I was like, damn, I like really have to, I became a better player because the little things that you hear in the mic that you're like, geez, I actually wasn't playing that as well as I thought I was.
There's nothing better than working on a record in a room. You ever work with a guy named Andrew Tufano?
No.
He's really talented, great songwriter, producer, but no, he's a very, very good just musician.
Yeah.
And 95% of the songs I'm recording my own acoustic guitars, but when I'm working with him, I'm like, he's a better player than I am. And then I can also focus on the engineering, and you're just like, oh, not only is this easier, but you're right. Like the player makes just everything is just easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to mix. It's easier to fit in there.
Yeah. It's like having a great singer.
Yeah.
Like, makes you feel like a genius producer.
Yeah.
You put on like an 1176 and it sounds amazing.
Yeah. I got one of